I sit here with tears in my eyes after having finished this fifth conversation with Kate, which took us into territory I do not think either one of us was prepared for. We have discussed drugs and nudity and masculine and feminine and sexuality and sensuality and all sorts of things that, yeah, that was not on the cards, but apparently it was on the cards. And that's the beauty of this type of discussion or conversation, I should say, which we also talk about at the end when Kate asks me about my perception of these five conversations that we've had. So listen to the end, check to see if you agree with me, if you can feel what I've felt from these five conversations that me and Kate have had, or if you have a completely different take on it. And if so, please let me know, because that would be just so much fun. So strip naked and join us.
I can't believe this is our last chat.
I know, right? Well,
I mean, I don't think it'll be our
for
last chat.
this, precisely.
Our last official get together.
Yeah, our last official get together.
Yeah, wonderful. And so, how's your day? Because I said good morning, but obviously it's your afternoon.
It is my afternoon. It's 2 p.m.
Yeah,
And my day, I've had quite a lovely day. I started with one of those mornings where I stay in bed for a couple of hours after I wake up,
nice.
reading and meditating and journaling a little. I did some
Just
non
swishing your legs back and forth.
Yeah, precisely. I
Yeah,
did some non-dominant, dominant handwriting back and forth between my inner shudders and myself, another part of myself. That was
yeah,
interesting. And then I've
yeah.
been in a meeting, and then I've been tending to this, that, and the other thing, emails here and calendars here, and setting up and organizing, and now here I am.
It sounds
Yeah,
like a lovely day. Being
yeah,
productive and
yeah,
while also relaxing at the same time. That's kind of
yeah,
the ideal. That's what we should all strive to.
yeah, yeah. So what about you?
Have to. Oh, I'm just getting started. It's only 9 o'clock here. So, but I have a busy weekend going because I have all of my hiking stuff is all spread out all over the kitchen. So I have to pack my bag for just a one day, an overnight hike that I'm doing with a friend on Sunday. And so I've got a bunch of client work that I have to get done before then. And we're going into the deep backwoods of Kejimkujik, which is a national park, a couple of hours sort of down the coast and inland from here, which is really beautiful, just lakes and ancient stands of hemlock and beautiful trees and ravens everywhere. And it's really lovely. So we're going to one of the most remote campsites that I'm aware of. Um, that is going to be 2 days of hiking. And it's my first time since it's only one night. I thought, well, why am I bringing a whole tent? Seems a little silly. Um, so I'm bringing a hammock instead.
Mhm.
So I have a new setup with a backpacking hammock and a net, a bug net, and a tarp. Uh, so that'll be my first time trying to sleep in a hammock. So if we spoke on Monday, you'd be able to have a look at me and gauge whether or not I slept.
How it
Because I'll
went.
either be like puffy faced and like woozy, or maybe it was fine. I mean, it's a fraction of the size. I mean, I do have to bring a couple of extra things, but like a tarp and that kind of thing. But yeah, so I'm kind of ready to get myself all loaded up like a pack mule and head off into the woods. So it'll be lovely. And it's just starting to feel like fall now, like just about now, where there's just a sudden the air has changed. It's not necessarily, it's a little bit cooler, but there's just something about the smell of fall and when it starts to hit that I think feels different and refreshing. And so it feels like a wonderful time to go out into the woods. So I've got like a bunch of prep stuff to do to get ready for that, just to look after the food and get all
So
packed and get everything packed
how
up as tiny as I
long,
can.
or rather, how far will you be walking?
Yeah, my friend is sort of acting as our camp chief, so she's got the route all planned out, and I think it's gonna be like maybe 5 hours, 6 hours a day, approximately. Um, Not a particularly difficult hike, it's remote. So and I'm looking after all the food, so I said that I would be the the chef of the trip, so I have to kind of get all of that organized. So I'm just kind of gonna go where I'm told. I actually don't
Cool.
remember the details of exactly, how long it is, but, yeah, it'll be fun. I haven't done a backpacking trip and even trip, it's only one night, but I haven't done that since I was in my 20s, I don't think. Like, I've camped, but it's always been car camping, um, so I haven't actually kind of gone into the woods with everything I need on my back
Because that
in quite
was
a
the
while, so
next
I'm
question. Yeah,
yeah.
for me, it's like, how much will you be carrying on your back? And,
Oh,
how
not
many
that much.
kilos?
Yeah, not that much. I haven't tested that yet. I have a big pack from my BC days, from my days in British Columbia, which makes it a almost a 30-year-old pack. But I remember being really comfortable and I'm not bringing a tent. So it'll
Hmm.
be a big bulky thermarest mattress because I need something pretty substantial to form a bit of a bed so I don't just curl up like a caterpillar in the hammock. Um, So it'll be stuffed pretty full, but I don't think it'll necessarily be heavy because it'll just
Mm.
be backpack, thermarest, and hammock and all of that stuff, and some clothes, and then obviously all the food. So yeah, but it'll be fun. It's nice to do
Mhm.
something different like that. We don't plan enough of those things with our friends. We always get in these moods where we say, "Oh, we should do that sometime. We
Yeah.
should go into the city and have a city getaway, or we should do this, we should do that." And it's so rare to actually say, "We are doing this, and here's the date," and to actually kind of lock it in because life just has a way of getting busy, and then before you know it, 5 years have gone by.
Yeah. So who
So,
was the one who actually
yeah.
said, "Here's the date"?
That was Misty, my friend. Yeah, she's more versed at Keji than I am. She's spent more time there than I have. So, she was the one that had this idea. She was like, "I've always wanted to do this route, and I can't find anyone to go with me." And I was like, "Well, sign me up. I'll go." And so immediately then we started kind of planning, and that was only about a month ago, maybe. So it's probably a little longer than that. So yeah, it'll be exciting. Looking
Cool.
forward to it. So I have to kind of get to that point of preparedness and trying to dig out all my old gear and finding it and rope and tarps and all that stuff. So yeah, an adventure.
An
Yeah, so it'll be
adventure
good.
for sure. I'm sure that
Very.
I will be able to follow along, if not during, then after on Instagram. I'm a
Yeah,
camp
definitely
liver.
after.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're both quite keen photographers, and so
Yeah.
we were both kind of lamenting, like, "Who's gonna bring the SLR?" Because she
Yeah.
has a fully manual camera, and so do I, and she takes gorgeous images because she's a sort of a farmer, and she has horses and cows, and she was the person that I had mentioned in a past conversation about she's a soil scientist, so she
Oh,
does
cool.
consulting
Yeah.
for farmers to help them sort of keep their land healthy and to switch crops over and all that stuff. And so she takes these gorgeous images of like her horse's nose, like covered in dew in the morning, or the exhale of a cow when the climate is just so that she can see it on the ridge and there's a little cloud around its head, and just beautiful sort of sparkling dew images. But we both decided we probably don't have space to bring one of our big cameras, but I'm tempted to try. So, especially where I'm not bringing a tent. So,
Mm.
it's not that heavy. Well, it is heavy actually. It's heavy as
It
heck.
is.
But
It is because
so
that's,
we'll see, especially with the big lens on there. She can
yeah.
probably see it behind me somewhere there. But
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so we'll see. Yeah.
Because that's the thing
And
that
we're
I've
bringing
been. Go ahead. You go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say we're also bringing mushrooms. So and the last time I tried mushrooms was 30 years ago on a backpacking trip, and it was so fun, and obviously now not drinking alcohol, but I don't wanna be so cold sober for the rest of my life, so I'm on a bit of an exploration to find, like Huey Lewis in the news to find my new drug because I need a new one. So because I'm not a weed person and I shouldn't say that. I've been trying to find the right form of weed and to figure out if that might work just to get that sort of I've had a few glasses of wine sort of feeling like it's Halloween and I want to be festive and fun. And so when I told her that I was bringing these mushrooms that I'd ordered on the internet, I mean, how boring can that get? Like, I didn't get it from some shady guy in a trench coat or some like, brat kid off a university, but I just ordered it online and so we'll see how that goes. So that could be kind of fun. It seems fitting that the only other time I've tried them has been with a great big pack on my back
Yeah.
and sleeping bag and yeah, yeah, so it'll be kind of an adventure in many ways, an inner adventure and an explicitly outward adventure. So,
So that is so it is so interesting to be on the lookout for your new drug. Um,
yeah.
I am such a chicken, honestly,
Mm,
when it comes to drugs. It's like I don't,
yeah,
you
me
know,
too.
I don't well, compared to me, from the sounds of it, no, you're not, right? I've not
Yeah.
tried, it's like I don't smoke. I've never smoked.
Neither have I, not once. Yeah.
I basically don't drink any alcohol or very, very little. I don't do coffee or black tea or green tea
Me
even
neither.
because I get
Yeah.
hooked on it and I don't want that sense of feeling. I've never tried weed. I've never tried shrooms. I've never, just no,
Yeah.
just I
Yeah.
ah! And it's like, have there
Yeah.
been opportunities? Well, yes, a few, not that many. Well, drinking, of course, there has been plenty, but it's just no, it's just not. It's just not
Yeah.
for me. And then I get scared because then I
Yeah.
think, mushrooms
Mhm.
or LSD or something, and oh my god, no. Um,
Yeah. I think my adventures are gonna be over with well, the only other thing that I've heard a lot of things positive things about lately has been hash. So to
mhm.
do kind of microdosing of hash, and honestly, the kind of mushrooms that I'm doing is microdosing. They're real shrooms, but I'm only taking a little bit. So I'm not, and I totally know the feeling because I've never drank coffee in my life. I've never had a single puff of a cigarette, and I did drink black tea, and I always really loved alcohol. Like
Hmm.
it's pretty rare for it to run away from me. I've spent years cultivating uh, my comfort level with it so that I know how it behaves for me. I know how I behave for it. It's never felt remotely addictive in any way, shape, or form. But of course, karmically, the last time that I was drunk, not knowing that was the last time I was drunk, was a bad one. So because you just don't drink a bottle of prosecco by yourself in 45 minutes without eating dinner. You just don't do that, Kate.
No,
Like
true.
you should know these things by now. But so I think back in it and I was like, oh, that was my last time. And it was awful. Like the room was spinning and it was just horrible. And oh, that's kind of tragic. But I've always generally really loved just enough alcohol. And so there's just occasions like 6 times a year maybe that I want that feeling of not just being myself, but like you, I think what you're describing is an aversion to losing control of oneself and really being extremely, dubious of altered states. I don't like the prospect of losing control of myself. And so I can't imagine ever moving into something that doesn't feel like a natural substance. So weed, I can see the little Well, I mean,
Yeah.
not these days, because these days we have vape pens and oils and CBD and all kinds of other stuff.
Mm.
But I know it comes from a natural source. The mushrooms actually arrived as dried mushrooms. You can't get into too much trouble with that. And obviously, neither of them are habit forming. Although I have actually seen quite a few people develop what they wouldn't describe as a habit, but I would in the age of weed being legal in Canada. So there's a lot of people I know who use it habitually every
Mm.
day, like
Mm.
just moms, that are just like, oh, I just really want something for some more energy while I'm cleaning the house, or I want something for energy while I'm working, or I need something to relax or calm down or something to help me sleep. And I'm like, I don't think that's maybe like you're doing it every day now. You have a different vape pen for functioning to lower your anxiety or to be productive. It's like if you can't, that's a crutch essentially.
Yeah.
If you can't operate in the world or be social or anything without that thing, like on a daily or even weekly basis, that would start to be an alarm bell for me. But that might just be my biases, which are more like what you described. But I just want that like 4 to 6 times a year dinner party, Christmas party, dressing up, special occasion, and just want to kind of not just be the only person sitting there kind of completely deadpan, not partaking in the moment. And I don't, and again, that's my stuff that I am someone who will watch everyone go up and lose their minds to meatloaf. And if I'm sober, I won't join them
Because
because
that's the thing, I will.
I
I
can't.
do that.
Yeah,
I totally do that. So
good for you.
I I have no issues just being queen of the dance floor, cold
Yeah,
stone sober. It's like I love that.
yeah,
And I love that. It's like I
yeah,
can and I don't there doesn't have to be anybody else on the dance floor. I'll still be on it. So
yeah,
I think that is part of the thing for me. So I'm not averse to the letting loose, and rhythm or
yeah,
music is definitely one medium, one
yeah.
way that you can do that with. And then I wonder how much of the my thoughts about this is because I mean, if you look at humanity, I would say that
Mm.
intoxication and or altered states is it's part of our history.
Yep.
It's like since
Mhm.
forever, right? It's like it's part of our history and our prehistoric history.
It's in
So it's
our
like
it's in our blood. Yeah.
yeah, so but I don't experience having been raised in a culture where anything but being drunk from alcohol really is the thing to do. And being drunk from alcohol, it's like it's not really, it doesn't really entice me. It doesn't really give me anything. It doesn't
Mhm.
bring any of those that I'm imagining, a shamanic ceremony with
Yeah.
altered states, this, that, and the other thing, whether you're
Yeah.
communicating with spirits and whatnot. It's like there's there's a there's a whole context around that
Yeah.
that
Of course.
I can go, oh yeah, I can totally see the point of that. I can see the value
Mhm.
of that. But it's like
But it's often
drunk,
just a hot
middle-aged
mess.
people who just, is like go out and throw up in the garden. It's like, no, not really.
No, it's a free license to obnoxiousness, which is not what you want. But it's so interesting to me that I listen to you describing yourself just jumping up and not being self-conscious in that way. And I think that must like I was listening to you thinking like, well, what's the difference between me and Helena in this regard? So what is it that where some people will just get up and dance in front of 300 people and other people are like just I'm not
Yeah,
freaking out about it, but I'm like, no, I'm not in that space. I'm not in that headspace
yeah.
of being kind of free like that. And what is that? Because the interesting thing is that to me, to be not drunk, like hot mess drunk, like the last time I was drunk, which was the first time in many years that that had happened for me. But to be just a little bit, like to just hit that point and be like, okay, that's enough. Just stay right there. Just that sweet, like gregarious, like free of one's mind, right? And that's what so much of it is for me is that when I'm in that sober place, that and sober in the literal and figurative way, that my brain is too loud for
Mm,
me to let loose and for me to enjoy. And so alcohol or something else helps to just like, oh, shush, just go up,
mhm,
just come on now, stop it. And it kind of stops my brain from, it stops the churning that gets in my own way. However, at the same and allows me to let loose and let go of control in a way that can be enjoyed sometimes. Hopefully not in a hot mess kind of a way, but in a light buzz kind of a way. But then the same inability or unwillingness to let go of control is also what protects me from trying acid or from trying cocaine or from like my aversion is
mm,
a brick wall. Like
mm,
there's just no way that I would ever take something synthetic that someone else has prepared or made that I mean, again, to be fair, we can't see inside the oil of a vape pen, but when you buy it from a commission that is a government institution, it's all been regulated and that it's legitimate. But it is so much about control, our
mm.
openness to things like that, our ability to cope without it. It's all the same things happening at once, isn't it? An aversion to letting go, but also an openness to letting go, like existing in the same person at the same moment, which is really
Which is
interesting to
really
me.
interesting. Yeah, it is. And I can
Yeah.
say that in one of the chapters in my book, Doing Gentle with an Edge, is about music as an
Yeah.
alibi, where music for me
Ooh,
provides an alibi for me where I am allowed by my brain, the mental vice keeping me very
yeah,
tightly controlled, to let go.
yeah,
So, music, no problem. I'll dance and sing on the streets, on the bike, in the bus, on the train. It's like
mhm,
wherever I'll go up on the dance floor. I don't care if there's nobody there. I will be dancing and singing and loving it.
yeah.
Theater,
I admire that.
acting, role playing, that type of thing. Oink. Mental
Yeah.
vice, very tightly screwed on, right?
Fascinating.
Because I'm
See,
not
because I
having
love
the
that stuff.
music as my alibi then. Then it's like, oh my
Yeah.
God. So yeah.
Because I'm not a shy person. I'm not necessary. It's weird because I'm not really extroverted and I don't even know if I'm introverted. I'm kind of both. So, but I don't have like an overall hang up about being in front of people. I do a lot of public speaking. I do um, anything that touches on stuff like theater or performance or performing the books that I've written or whatever. I love that. I love that feeling. I have no hesitation whatsoever. But even being silly in front of an audience, like I was at a big children's festival in Labrador, and we had to go out in front of an audience of probably 400 or 500 kids and adults and do a little kind of a thing. Um, and I thought, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do. And all the other authors were kind of just going up like, hello, my name is so and so, and I'm an author, and this is the book I wrote. And I was like, that's boring. Like people don't they don't care about that. They don't care about me. So I mean, they do in a way that they find it interesting to meet an author, but it's not about me, it's about them. And so I thought, well, what can I do? And I thought, I know. I taped a toilet paper roll to the bottom of my heel. And then I walked out with my nose in the air and acting very important and kind of strutted out, trailing toilet paper like it was stuck to the bottom of my shoe, and this toilet paper roll kind of bouncing along after me. And as soon as I went out, I went out very like snooty and well, hello, and this is a very important evening, And they all just were howling with laughter, the whole auditorium, and kids, and they were jumping up on their seats and pointing and
Yeah.
laughing because there's nothing better than an adult being obliviously silly. And so I do this, and then finally I turn around. I'm like, I don't. This is very serious. Stop it. Stop laughing. This is serious. And I kind of didn't break. And they were, of course, that made them like the volume came up even more, and they're laughing and they're pointing. And finally, I turn around and I do this big thing, and oh, I'm so embarrassed, and I run off stage. And that's pretty much it. But I mean, I came back and did a little talk, um, and it was really just I asked all the other authors to come up on stage. I didn't talk about me or my book or anything, and I said I want the other authors to come up on stage and the illustrators. So it was maybe like 10 of us. And I said, as soon as I say something is um, that is true for you, I want you to sit down on the floor. And they were like, okay. And they're all like, it's a lineup, like a police lineup of all these really, really well known authors and illustrators. And I just said a bunch of statements like, my work, the ideas for my books just come to me. They all stayed standing. Or, just the idea that it's easy to write, that these are just magical people who are just more talented than the rest of us, that they never doubt their talent. And they all just sort of stood there, and everyone was waiting like to see if one of them was going to sit down to say, yes, you know what, I am really talented and more so than anyone else. And it is easy to write because I'm a writer and I never doubt the work that I do. And so finally I was like, thank you very much. Everyone goes off stage. And that was the only thing I wanted the kids to know is just that if you are sitting down in front of a computer feeling like you're probably not good enough, then welcome.
Yeah, you're in
You are
good
a part of a
company.
cohort. This
Yeah.
is normal. Keep going. Don't listen to this chatter, right? So, but for me to figure out a way of delivering something that would get their attention in the middle of a lot of people just coming up and reading their bios, um, that's the kind of stuff that I love. I love figuring that stuff out and being a storyteller, which I guess is the best word for it, and engaging people in their own storytelling and talking about really personal stuff to an audience of hundreds of people, like when my son died and how to get through grief. And so I've done that over and over again. But if everyone jumps up and starts dancing to Meatloaf in broad daylight, I'll just be sitting here with my club soda, like miserably thinking about, oh, that's never going to be me again. Well, that's over for me because no way, man, because it's not dark enough. I'm not drunk enough. I'll never be drunk again. Not like them. Look at them all hugging on the dance floor and bouncing up and
Mm.
down and completely free of their minds and completely unself-conscious. So it's just so interesting that I can do all those things. I can walk out with
Yeah.
toilet paper dragging from my shoe to purposefully make an ass of myself, but I can't do it earnestly. I can't take that risk of letting go. And so this is a big part of like figuring out how to
Mm.
live now is
Mm.
what's going to be my altered state? How am I going to manage it so that I feel okay? How do I lose just enough control? Just a little so that I can play in that space of being more free than I feel in my brain. But then that's all kind of bullshit too, because we're all free in different ways. But
Yeah.
I find those differences really fascinating.
Yeah, and it's fun. I mean, I did food hygiene and safety trainings on Wednesday at a contract packaging company.
Yeah.
2 sets because they have 2 shifts. And so an hour and a half for each shift, and, it's serious stuff. It's a
Mm.
mandatory thing. It's something that is required every year, on an annual basis from the regulators, etcetera, right? So it's stuff that needs to be done, but I don't have to
Yeah.
make it boring, you know? I
Right. Of
don't, and
course.
I
Yeah.
don't make it boring. Many trainers do make it fuck ass boring, and I just don't know why they do that. And I love doing this. So, same with you. It's like I have no
Yeah.
issues um laughing, joking, jostling, kind of, really giving my all, not at all
Yeah.
putting myself in this, oh, I know best, etc., but rather, oh shit, I don't know the answer to this. How can we find out? It's like really being very human. Um,
Yeah.
and I don't, I enjoy that. And so I'm interested in me and Özlem. We're still trying to get to an improv class. Our
Right.
our last we had one more thing that we had planned, which was to be the week after next, but turns out, no, you can't come unless you've taken a course. Well, fuck, we wanted to
Oh,
come so to see
that's
if we wanted to take a
that's kind
course.
of ironic, right?
So
An anti-spontaneity improv class.
yes, so this is the thing
This is a
precisely. It's like really, really fun how it's so hard to be improvisational to find somewhere to try improv. So now we have Özlem is trying the local, like, kind of theater and culture place where he lives, if there's a theater trainer who wants to. And he actually suggested one of my friends who's worked a lot with theater. And I haven't given her a thought, but I'll be asking her too if she can do a training for us and maybe some other, or if she knows somebody who can,
yeah.
so that we can organize it ourselves, for crying out loud. Because
Mm.
there's one, the Malmö Amatör Teaterforum, the Malmö Amateur Theater Forum in here in Malmö, they have 10-week courses. It's like, no, that's not what we wanted to do. We wanted a one thing. And they do have a one thing, which is that 10-week course pushed into a weekend in
Yeah.
November or something, which is like, maybe, if we can't work it out, maybe that's what we'll have to do. But
Mm.
I've I when I was a foreign exchange student in the US in 89, 90, I was in the choir, the school choir, and
Where were
I
you in the
was
US? Just so I can picture
Lincoln,
it.
Nebraska. In the
In
middle
Nebraska.
of the country.
Wow.
Yeah, and I lived in Malmö, which is close to the sea. I'd been living
Mhm.
for 3 years in Arvika, which is kind of a third of the way up in Sweden and not close to the ocean at all. So when I applied, I said, "Could
Yeah.
you please put me along the coast?" So they put me equidistant to both coasts in the middle of the fucking country. So,
Like
I
Nebraska is like prairie land, right?
it's prairie land, yeah, yeah, and it's fairly, it's
Wild.
very, lots of free churches, yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's it was different, let's put it that way. But the
Yeah.
good thing about Lincoln, Nebraska is it was, and I think still is, I hope still is, a choir capital for the high schools. So there were 4 big high schools. Each of those 4 high schools had really great music programs.
Mm.
So I was at Lincoln East High School, and we had a great choir. So 160 students, 20 basses. And, I've never been in a choir that size before or after. Just
Mhm.
fantastic. And
What a feeling to sing like that.
it's amazing. And you have the same schedule every day, at least in the US. So an hour after lunch
Yeah.
every day, 5 days a week, we were singing. So it was like really just fantastic from a musical perspective. We did
Mm.
a rock and roll show, and we did a musical, and we did a choir contest, amongst other things.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
same there, musical. Okay, how now I'm supposed to be acting. I am so much more self-conscious than when
Yeah.
I'm just singing or just dancing for me, because then it's like, then I really don't have this. This is what it's supposed to be like. I can just be.
And so much of that is based on our perception of audience, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you might feel more self-conscious when explicitly performing in front of an audience, whereas I feel more self-conscious when I'm implicitly
Yes.
performing in front of perhaps an imagined audience.
Yeah.
So It's
Yeah.
I look at that as an audience when I see the band and it's still broad daylight and there's, 30 or 40 people all gathered in an open space in front of the band, but then 3 or 400 people all just watching, sitting at picnic tables. And I'm just like, I could never do that. Why could I never do that? Like, I'm
Yeah.
enjoying the music, but I just can't reach that level. Nobody is looking at me. If I do that, nobody's looking at any of those people and judging them. I'm certainly not. I'm looking at them and thinking, that's so great.
Yeah.
Too bad that'll never be me.
Yeah.
Which is a
Yeah.
really funny thing, but it has so much to do with audience. And I think a lot of those things we inflict upon ourselves,
Yeah.
we constrict ourselves based on usually a false narrative around audience. Because in improv, I think everyone's watching improv and thinking, you, as long as you stay open to it, some people might be funnier than others, but you can't really bomb at improv because I think everyone recognizes how hard that is to think on your feet. I think you recognize people that are really good at it
Yeah.
and you're sort of in awe of that. But you would never look at someone who is a bit flat and think, well, they're terrible. You would just think that's normal. Like that's
Yeah.
totally
That would be
understandable and
me.
normal. And
Yeah.
it's a very forgiving audience, I think, that would
Yeah.
be watching improv. And they're gonna get a kick out of it almost no matter what you do. But yeah, that's so interesting to think about
But so
audience and what that
yeah,
does to.
and audience, it's an I like that you bring that up because I don't have an issue with those two. I mean, I do have more of an issue with the theater when I'm supposed to be doing something according to a plan or somebody
Yeah.
else's ideas, you know. If it's just me, it's easier again. Then I can do it again. But if there's somebody else who's written the
Yeah.
script or decided on this is the exercise, the role play we will be doing, you do your part. It's like then I'm, will I be letting them
You feel
down?
pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's
But
something
then at the
there.
same way, I look at those experiences. I look at the brewery hosting that band, and I know that they love to have people get up and dance. And I know
Yeah.
how hard they've worked to put on this concert series. And they want it to be really boisterous and lively. And
Yeah.
they want pictures of people having fun at their place. And so there is a part of me that I get in this little stupid, I sound so neurotic to describe it, but again, in this little sort of shame spiral of like, there's a selfishness in indulging our fear of an audience.
Yeah.
So, because we are refusing to lend our energy unselfconsciously to this effort, we're holding back from it because we're thinking about ourselves. So that prevents us from giving our whole self to that moment, whether it's an explicit performance or a spontaneous dance off, because it adds to that moment for everyone else there. It's a bit of a downer for all my friends to get up and dance, and for me to just be sitting there with all their husbands, like the sort of in my head and looking at them and just
Yeah.
thinking, oh, like, I mean, that was a bit different. I have to forgive myself for that because that was my first time being out with drunk people as someone who had to sit there drinking club soda. So I was in my own sort of processing and grief and having to let go of something that had always been my friend for the most part. So, but I think a lot about that, about that, how generous people are
Hmm.
when they are unself-conscious. When they're not focused on the self, that's when we're able to be generous. And that applies all the time. So when we're depressed, that is an extreme form of self-focus. And that's not to blame people who are depressed, but that is to say that really is one of the most arrogant states of being. One of the most selfish states of being is to be depressed, to think that the world is revolving around our misery, that our misery is the worst misery, that I'm the worst person, all of this kind of whipping ourselves with the cat and nine tails of all of our reasons for why we suck or why life sucks. It's an arrogance, it's a selfishness because it gives us the excuse to just sort of not bring our whole selves. And it puts us in a position of not being able to be generous with our energy and our spirit, to trust other people, to trust moments, to be unself conscious, because that always enriches a moment, a place, a group of people, or another individual. To be unself conscious, to be unself aware, and to then allow ourselves to be generous, even if you're, uh, you know, doing improv, right? Or joining in to dance with people, and that's something that I think is a little bit of a kick in the pants on the shame front. That is perhaps positive to know this inside of us is I am holding back, I'm withdrawing my energy. I'm being stingy with my energy because I'm thinking about myself. How am I going to come across? What you think those other people up there on the improv stage don't have those feelings too? Of course they do. But they're just going up there and doing it anyway because they're focusing on being generous. Do the other friends who get up feel self-conscious that they might look a little silly? Yes, but they are deciding to not
Mm.
care.
Yeah, it's a
And that is
choice.
something that is really conscious that I feel like we've talked about before, that we can decide how to feel. You just have to decide how to feel. That you can just decide to say, I'm just not going to be that way today and give it a try. Now, it doesn't always work necessarily. And I don't mean to minimize states of being like depression because a lot of the times depression is rooted in a truth, in a real trauma or a real experience that we've been through that is really, really, really tough to shake. The dead baby, the missing husband, any number of stuff that lingers from childhood. But there does come a point where depression loosens its grip on us, where we just have to say, yeah, I feel this way. But right now, I'm just going to not care that I feel this way. And I'm just going to stay in this moment and and that's when generosity is like, oh, am I allowed to come back again? Like, and then there you are contributing to the moment. And of course, then you're faking it until you make it. Because once you're in that moment and contributing, you're never regretting that you did it. You're always proud of yourself, no matter if you bomb, no matter if you did look a bit silly. You're like, well, I did that. And I was a part of it. And I was contributing my energy. And I was, like, again, we mentioned it before, that video of the people dancing. And the one crazy guy gets up and starts at the outdoor festival. And then the second person joins him,
Second
which is
one.
like,
Yeah.
interesting. And then the third one joins, and then it's a
And then
crowd, then it's
pop.
a party. And
Yeah.
then everyone goes. And so it
Yeah.
really does matter, like the energy that you bring to a room. If you can get over yourself long enough, which again, like I failed to do that the last time that I was
Mm.
out because I was grappling with a lot. So it's human to not be able to get over our stuff. It's human to stay in that arrogance, to stay in that selfishness, and to just keep ourselves to ourselves because we're just feeling down. We're kind of obsessed with our own story.
Yeah, and
That's
I've been
normal,
when if I
you
look at
know.
myself, I look at myself and me and Bella in the last episode were actually also kind of touching on this. Because if I look at myself, it's like I don't have an issue just being me in front of an audience on the dance floor or doing training or holding a
Yeah.
speech or it's
Yeah.
like that's not an issue at all anymore. At least, it's like I've practiced this. It's been um
Hmm.
the first time I gave a training, of course I was more nervous than I am today when I do it because I know that
Yeah.
I do that and I do it well and I'm good at it and I enjoy
Yeah.
it, right? It's like there's not really a lot of issues to worry about there. But for me, like I don't know if it was me and a man or a partner and I wanted to do the sexy striptease dance. Holy fuck no. It's like That's where
Yeah.
no, music would not be enough of an alibi there. Because then it's just so again, that
Yeah.
audience aspect, okay, here's the one person that I do not want to think she's just dumb, she's
That you're
ugly,
silly.
she's silly. What the fuck is she doing? Does she really think that would turn me on? Whatever it is like, so whoops, self-consciousness just hits me hard,
Yeah.
right?
I think that's because through our romantic partners, there's a dynamic there where they help us to see the best version of ourselves. So we are seeing ourselves through love. It gives us a lens to be able to get some distance from who we are and see ourselves reflected in the eyes of someone else. And so that's why love feels so affirming, because it gives you that little jolt of like, maybe I am actually interesting. Maybe I am actually charming, because you're seeing it reflected back at you in another person. Um, and I think another parallel to that block, because you're terrified of not getting that confirmation back, right? And a big parallel that I'm feeling here is that, and again, thinking about generosity, is being a photographer and
Mhm.
taking someone's portrait, which I've done hundreds of times. And every time, almost every time you take someone's portrait, they have that moment where they just, and
Yeah,
because the camera goes up and it's looking
yeah,
at you,
yeah,
and everyone goes, I just want you to know I'm terrible at this. I don't know what to do with my face. I don't know where to look. I don't know what. And I'm like, I never take a good picture. I mean, you know that everyone says that, that they take a horrible picture. And but you can see it. There's an unspoken, there's an intimacy that is actually not unlike. It's
yeah,
a micro moment that's not unlike love. The camera is the lover. And that's why the camera is so terrifying for people.
yeah,
So for them to actually look straight down the barrel of that camera and you can see the fear on their face. What if I don't see through this lover, through this lens,
yeah.
what I hope I'll see?
The
What if my
reflection.
self perception is wrong? Or, God forbid, what if my self perception is right? What if I'm a piece of shit? And the camera is as confronting as taking our clothes off in front of a person for the first time. It's it, it's a profoundly intimate exchange that happens that is weirdly depersonalized, because it's a machine that is between you and the subject, or you and the photographer. You're not really seeing the photographer. They're seeing you. They're seeing every pore, but you're not seeing them. And so there's an incredible vulnerability to it. But I really love when there are moments as a photographer, when everyone says that. Everyone says, I take a horrible picture, or I don't want to do this, and they're resistant or whatever. And that's where I have to develop that trust and that rapport. Um, and then I can see it flip, where someone says, I'm feeling this way, but I've got to get through this exchange. So I'm just going to decide that I don't care that I feel this way. And I'm going to allow this person, this artist with the camera in her hand, to do the best she can. And I'm going to try and give her a little piece of myself, even though I'm scared, even though I'm uncomfortable, even though I'm afraid of what I'm going to see, even though I'm afraid of being right, that I am not an attractive person, or that I'm going to see all of my fear bouncing back into the lens. I'm going to just decide to not care about what's going on in my head. And I'm just going to breathe and look straight at the camera and allow that exchange to happen. And it's a little moment of vulnerability, a little moment of trust. And I often have to get people to shake it off a few times in that, but you get that moment and you can feel it like a fish on the end of a line. You can feel the nibbles. And you're just like, yeah, you're doing it. You're giving me a little something. And
Yeah,
that is such a beautiful moment as an artist trying to create a moment, or as a brewery trying to create a concert series that people love, that brings community together, or an improv group trying to make people laugh. There's a moment when that energy is tentatively given, like, okay, I'll work with you. Like, I'm going to work with this, even though I'm scared of it. I'm going to work with you. I'm going to work with you, brew pub, to create this fun experience that everyone gets a real kick out of. And I'm going to lend my energy to this, or I'm going to lend my energy to this portrait that scares the shit out of me. And it's such a beautiful moment that teaches me, I think, sometimes more than it teaches the subject, because it reminds me of how beautiful generosity is when people are, especially when people are afraid, because I'm just like, oh, you're doing it. Thank you. And then, of course, they burst out laughing and give me something even better. So that is just, yeah, it's all kind of looping together for me in this intimacy and generosity and vulnerability uh, puzzle that is all kind of coming together as we're talking about all these scenarios.
And
Interesting.
it's I think for me, because I think in 2018 I started to really get into going down to the nude beach instead of the clothed beach, because it's so much
Mm.
lovelier to skinny dip in the ocean than it is to wear a skimpy bathing suit
I
or a
know.
bikini.
Why is that? It's the
And
tiniest bit of fabric,
yeah,
but
but
it's
it
true.
gets cold and yucky, and it stops the flow
Mhm.
somehow. So since 2018,
Absolutely.
I've done that, and I've done much more sauna, which, as we talked about in another
Yeah.
episode, is like it is done without any swim clothes on. Um,
Mm.
so getting naked in front of people, not a thing. Not a, I've had several Tinder dates even where the first thing is, okay, let's go down skinny dipping. It's like that hasn't been an issue.
Oh, man. Wow. Yeah.
And with a lover, with a boyfriend or a husband that I know that I love, there is something. So I'm starting to it links to the therapy that I'm doing at the moment, where right now there's a lot of me as a child coming up, as the 3-year old, a 6-year old, 8-year old, whatever, where somewhere deep inside of me there is a belief, a strong belief, that I want to heal, let go of, grieve, whatever it is, that I'm not
Yeah.
worthy of being loved, that I'm not lovable
Yeah.
enough. So if I really, really show myself, you won't. You will say, thanks, goodbye. Um, so there's
Right.
that aspect of losing control. Shit scares me to pieces.
Mm.
It's like, because somehow there is this, I'm not worthy, I am not enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not,
And that's just
I'm
the
I'm
base
not.
definition of vulnerability
Yeah.
is that grappling with that exact declaration, what we tell ourselves.
And
Yeah.
it's I can, so the closer the person, the more important the person, the harder it gets. The more fearful I
Yeah.
get. What is the judgment? Will they now say, bye, no more you for me, thank you? Uh
Well, especially when you've experienced that
yeah,
exact scenario, when you've
yeah,
had someone say,
yeah,
I've had enough of this person, and that person
yeah,
happens to be you. That's a tough, that's a crisis of faith, no doubt.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. But having also been through something like that from the other side, having been the person who says, I'm done, um, I know from having been in that position that it had way more, if not 95% to do with me and not with brokenness on behalf of the other party.
yeah.
So, um, it, yeah, That's so interesting. There's another wall that I I imagine. I've never been naked in public. I've never
Really?
been. No, no. And I'm not prissy at all. I'm not, even when I go through those ups and downs of how I feel about my body, which have always been really well adjusted for the most part. I've never had many hang-ups about my body. Um, my body has fucking been through a lot. So I feel like I've had to nurture quite a bit of gratitude and forgiveness to my body, which means that the various vanities that most people struggle with, of being maybe a little chubby or whatever it is that makes people self-conscious in public. I'm sort of way beyond that because I have a scar that from which sprang death. So my dialogue with my body goes much deeper than vanity. That's not to say I don't have vanity, but so it's not out of vanity. Like I'm afraid to show my body. I don't know what that is. And the interesting thing that I think about is growing up, um, there was no shame about our bodies, but like I never saw my parents naked that I can
Mm.
remember. And I've talked to some friends about this as we've been hiking and things like that, and talking about where that sort of body insecurity comes from. And there are people who have really intense body insecurity who pin it on, I never saw my parents naked. Like we were not one of those families. But then there's other people that have really intense body insecurity. And their dad was walking around with his schlong out all day long and was completely
Yeah.
naked all the time. And so I don't think it has anything to do with that. But I can't help but put that on the table. I think it's cultural. I think it's cultural to, in the difference between, say, nakedness in Europe versus nakedness in North America. I think there's also cultural differences family to family. So we have the more kind of hippie parents that were like nakedness is normal and it's healthy, and you're going to see your mom like dripping out of the shower and with no towel and going to her closet. That was just never ever a thing in my household, but it also wasn't ever spoken about in a way that made it verboten. So I wonder, I don't know where that comes from, especially when knowing as women um, that men will always adore the female form. Men are generally not going to notice an extra 7 pounds and go, "Ugh, stay away from me. Don't touch me below the elbows," because men don't think of women in that way. Women think of women in that way.
Mhm.
Women are constantly judging and competing each other, and I think that's what make women much more body conscious than men, because men don't judge each other like that. They may shit talk each other a little now and then, like, about each other's beer bellies or dad bods or whatever, but it's only in a way to kind of encourage each other. Whereas
I think, yeah, I think it is shifting though. I think
women hold all their own preciousness.
unfortunately, I think young men are getting more and more of the really bad b- body dysmorphic
Mm.
signals or stuff that impacts that leads to that.
That leads to them having more insecurities?
Yes, yes,
Okay, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, that's another interesting thing too. That never sat well with me, that the sort of feminist narrative of, oh, the media is so brutal. And, oh, Cosmopolitan magazine has, very an unreachable ideal on its covers. And I'm like, well, not really. I mean, not everyone is born kind of whatever it is, an ectomorph, like 6 feet tall and built like a ballerina. No, but that's a normal human form.
Mhm.
Um, but also, why do we think we're so special for being subjected to all these magazines that we buy, by the way? We buy all this shit, and then whine about it. But do we think that men don't have the same pressure? Because, of course, you're not going to see a guy with a dad bod on the cover of GQ. men are under just as much pressure to
Yeah,
be
yeah.
strong and to have
And
a six
and
pack,
and
and we're
it is
just
shifting.
it's
Today you
yeah.
see a lot more men suffering from anorexia.
Mm,
20 years ago, not a thing. Basically not a thing. Today, a thing.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah. So there is a shift in this. There is this all of the shit that no, everyone is helping to put on this dysmorphic way of being in the world in a way is now
Yeah.
also um increasing for men.
Mm. Well, it increases
Um,
with as the culture becomes more and more shallow,
yeah, yeah,
um, and more empty, and people are less happy, but more focused on their superficial.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's
But
the
it's
busier we are.
interesting. It's interesting this thing about nudity and being
It
comfortable
is.
with
I
your body.
know.
Because I mean, I still see my mom naked. She still sees me naked.
Yeah.
I'm 50.
Yeah.
She's 79. My
Yeah.
dad, I haven't seen naked in a long time, but we don't, we don't hang as much. We don't, the settings are
Yeah.
different. So it's not, this must not happen, really. It's rather, it just
Right.
won't
Yeah.
happen. Um,
Yeah.
but, but I'm probably one of those hippy dippy moms who, walks around
Yeah. There's
naked, and
absolutely nothing wrong with
my
that at
kids
all.
do too, and it's quite
Yeah.
uh it's interesting to see that. It's interesting to see the difference in when you feel the need to cover yourself up and when you feel like, no, I don't really care about it. How that shifts with context, with age, um, and all of those things. But
Yes.
I do, it's like, I regret not having taken my kids down to the open air sauna place when they were smaller because I really
Yeah.
wasn't there. I think the first time I was there was like, or not the first time I was there, but the first time I was there in the summer where you're actually out on the deck where it's just women and everybody's lying around naked, tanning themselves or just enjoying the sun rather. And you could
Yeah.
see, I don't know, 10 years ago or something, you could see all of these fascinating bodies, boob shapes and hairy butts and who's shaved and where and who's not shaved and where and long and short and thick and thin and where there's really clear forms where there's more here's one
Mhm.
form, it's
Yeah.
fascinating. I love it. I absolutely love it. I can
Yeah.
be mesmerized looking at this. Um, and I had a thought when I did that time. It's like, oh, this is where we should take all of our young kids so
Mhm.
that they get to see the variety that is there, the
Yeah.
endless variety that is there, because it is less shown in media, in on TV shows. Usually everybody is slim except for the fat friend. That can be a feature, the fat kind friend. Okay, yeah, that can be a feature in a series or a comedy series or whatever, right? But you very
Mm.
seldom see them naked because that's not what the fat friend does. The fat friend is the kind one that then takes care of the gorgeous, svelte um, protagonist whose heart is broken. It's like all of these um, characters are almost caricatures of what it's supposed to be like. And
Mhm.
like, well, what if the fat friend is horny as hell? You know, can they be that? Oh no, they can't be that because they're fat. It's like, well, actually, they can. And they're allowed
Mhm.
to, and they're welcome to, right? So the the variety, I think I was watching, a couple of years ago, I was watching, The 100, the TV series, kind of science fiction, science fantasy. So there's
Yeah.
quite a lot of or seasons. The first 2, 3 are really, really good.
Yeah.
They did that without really making a point of it. There were short people and tall people and thick people and thin people, and there were all races, all colors, all shapes, all there were gays and lesbians and mixed couples, and it's like it was without making a thing of it. Just it was just there, um, which I enjoyed because that's and I mean, this all, or this at least, also centers in on this the good girl thing, which I think is another one of my mental vices. It's like
Mm.
it's okay for you to be horny and wanting to get some, but it's not okay for me because I'm supposed to be a good girl and I'm supposed to be, I can't do that thing. So there's another one of those boink
Yeah.
that just shuts me down. Um,
Mm. I think I went the first time that I went for a hike with a friend of mine, who's a poet, and he lives just down the road. And we connected sort of through the local literary, just a literary awareness of each other. Followed each other on Instagram, started chatting, and it was like we really got to be buddies because we're like right next to each other, practically just down the road on the same river. And we should hang out sometime. And so we did. And we went he took me to this secret beach that nobody knows about, bashing through the woods to get there. Because he's also kind of a naturalist. And so he knows all of these hidden ancient roads from like, well, ancient in Canada terms, going back, 300 years. And so we go for this hike. And I think it was the first time that we hung out. It was a gorgeous day. The tide was low, so the beach was there, and the surf was just really fun and really lovely. And I hadn't worn a swimsuit. But he was like, he didn't either, but he was like, I gotta go in. And this is someone that I had just met, and he's stripped down just to his underwear. And I remember being like, oh, like, "Oh, mm," because, but it's so stupid because the underwear is the same thing as the swimsuit. They were just
yeah,
black boxers.
yeah,
And he went in and swam, but I was just like, "Oh gosh," like, it feels like kind of an intimate thing, and I'm seeing this person in their underwear, and I'm like, "Nope, I could never do the same thing." Uh, and I think I'm trying to as I'm listening to you, I'm trying to pin, "What's that? What is that? Why do I have that block about nudity?" Even though I'm not a prude at all, but and I don't think of myself as having, like, any sort of chronic body insecurity issues, which has nothing to do with someone's size because lots of people of all sizes have those feelings. But
yeah,
what popped into my head was when Harry Met Sally, the movie. That when Billy Crystal and Meg Ryan are talking, and the whole premise of the movie is that men and women cannot be friends.
mm,
It's not possible because the man is always going to want to bonk the woman, and that feels like it's getting into, um, what it is for me is that it's not something that certain intimate moments that involve men and women together, are inherently sexual and can't help but be sexual in their context. So, um, regardless of whether or not I'm with someone, like for example, I'm married, so but oddly, that wasn't my hesitation in not stripping off my clothes and joining Michael in the ocean. The hesitation was that it feels like I'm embarking on a sexually intimate moment that might have some promise attached to it or something that I don't mean to imply, even though he's a lovely, good-looking guy. But I, I feel like it just comes loaded with implied promise of some kind that feels like an intimacy that I don't intend. And it's like, well, are we cultured to just sexualize nudity? Or is that our evolutionary reality? That is an incontrovertible fact about men and women, at least the straight ones, that a man is always going to see a woman sexually, especially if he sees her naked. How can he not? Um, and that a woman is always going to see a man as seeing her sexually, or and also see him sexually, because they're two puzzle pieces. This goes into that. And it feels good when we do that. And it's a sharing of an intimate, the context can't help but be sexual. And I feel like there's a part of me that's like, when we say that women and men can be friends, we're kind of lying to ourselves. Like, I'm kind of more on the Billy Crystal side of things because I'm very much a practical, I'm a realist. I don't want to deny human nature. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. And I'm not saying that men just only want to try and bang as many women as they can. That's not what I'm saying. But that is our evolutionary drive. That is hardwired into us. And so that context can't help but be there. And I feel like my hesitation around nudity sounds prudish, but weirdly it's not. It's not me saying, well, only my husband gets to see that, or only the person that I'm being intimate with currently gets to see that. Um, it's just more of a pragmatic view on relations between the sexes, and sometimes being okay with that. But most of the time, I don't want to put myself, and I don't know how to reconcile that with a Swedish sauna, because that cultural context is so long baked and long simmered, um, to be non-sexual. But no one ever told me to not be sexual.
Mm.
No one ever told me you're a bad person if a boy sees you naked, or if a men are only out to try and screw you. I never had any disordered thinking around men or my body or anything else. I wasn't ashamed about my body in any way, but I'm just trying to think aloud here and think, like, why do I hesitate with those moments? And it's, I'm on a beach completely alone with a man that I just met. And even though my bra and underwear are no different from a bikini, the implication is different. Those are my intimate clothes. And that's not sounds so prissy to put it that way, but yeah, it's just interesting to talk through that. For me, it doesn't feel cultural, but
And
I
for
might be
me,
a
I
fool
think
to
it
say that
is.
it doesn't, you
I
know?
think it
Yeah.
is extremely cultural because if you look at humanity, like the concept of clothing is like it's a
Yeah.
recent addition. You know, it started to be a thing when we migrated out of Africa, out of a climate where you don't need
Mhm.
clothes.
Right. Yeah.
Uh,
Climate is a lot of it. Yeah.
so I think there's a lot of there's that. I don't know if this is a true story or one of those there's a rat in the pizza stories about the somewhere in Africa there was, 100 years ago or something, some big shot from Britain was coming and the local authorities were very clear to the natives that, oh, you have to, like, you can't be wearing just your loin cloth, you have to cover your
Yeah.
breasts and stuff. And everybody lines up. And when the person comes, the ladies take their loin cloth and flip it up so that he can't see the the boobs, but yoni is all there in the open. And it's
Yeah.
like, well, this is what you said. You said we can't show our breasts, right? Um,
Yeah.
because the breasts aren't as sexualized in many, many cultures. Um,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yes.
right? So
Yeah.
I think it is a very cultural thing. Um,
Yeah.
and it's like I have let's put it this way. I don't want to think that a man and a woman can't be friends.
Yeah.
And I have examples, personal examples where I'm friends with a man where there's no electricity, there's
Yeah.
no sexual tension, there's just nothing of that sort going on, and
Yeah.
we can have the most
Yeah.
intimate relationship without physical intimacy. Then I have friends where there is that sexual tension.
Yeah.
Um,
I can just hear Billy Crystal's voice in my in my head, because Meg Ryan said the same thing. I have plenty of friends who are men, and he's
yeah,
like, "No, you don't.
yeah,
You don't. You think you do, but you don't, because they're
yeah.
looking at they're thinking of you in a way that you don't understand that they're thinking of you. So it's already screwed up. Like
Yeah,
that it's kind of
and it's
women's
like
naivety that we
yeah,
think
and
that we're
possibly
just
so,
friends.
and but
It's
it's like
interesting. It's so
I
funny to think
don't
about.
know that that's true.
Yeah.
And
I don't
I
either, by the way. I'm not sure, but
and I
I
wonder if the
yeah.
thing is it doesn't matter what they think, it's what I think that matters. That's what makes me comfortable or not comfortable. That's what makes me
Yeah. Sure.
uh
Yeah.
right? So it's like when I say there's no sexual tension, well, for me there isn't.
Yeah.
Um uh, I don't perceive it from the other, but I'm not in their brain and their bodies. I don't know for sure,
Mm.
but I don't perceive it at all. Um, but it is I've had this type of conversation with other friends as well, and I think we even did it in a if it was in a tankesbjörn um, meetup one time. Um, because I find it interesting. And I find it interesting just because I am so comfortable stripping
Right.
in almost all circumstances, all contexts, except. And it's not that I'm not comfortable stripping in
Yeah.
front of somebody I love. I don't have an issue walking around naked in front of somebody I love. But if I'm then supposed to be enticing and alluring and sexual and turning you
Yeah.
on, it's like that's that's the that's the area where I just go, "Oh, deer in headlights" type feeling,
Yeah.
right?
Mm.
So I was like, I don't have an issue. um, but
Yeah.
there I do. And it is to do with that audience. It is to do with my belief that somehow I don't do this thing well
Yeah.
enough for you to not just
Yeah.
laugh your head off and say bye. Right. So it's fascinating where
It
we
is,
do
isn't it?
have those walls and what
Mm.
can we do about it and how conscious am I about them and what how am I playing with them?
Yeah. And there's nobody's right or wrong. Like,
No.
I remember watching When Harry Met Sally and thinking Sally is absolutely right, but so is Harry.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
both right at the same time about two things that you would think can't coexist. So,
Yeah. But
we
it's
all have
it's
our I could nevers, and we all have our I don't know why that's your I could never. I do that all the time. But it doesn't mean that you're somehow more open than me, or that I'm somehow more open than you. I just find it fascinating. Like, where do those tripwires come
yeah.
from?
Yeah.
how were they implanted into
Yeah.
us?
Yeah.
Sometimes maybe it was by some kind of a story that we've been told since we were kids. Sometimes a terrible loss or an embarrassment or humiliation that we can never wrap our heads around. Um, but sometimes not. Sometimes it is the broader culture that we were brought up in, or who knows? I
And
don't know, but I find it so interesting. There's so much there's so much contradiction in it,
yeah,
for each of us.
precisely. Yeah, precisely. And the thing is,
Yeah.
I did I've talked about this before, but hopefully not with you. At the No Mind festival that I attended in 2018, which is this big thing
Mm.
up in Ängsbacka with 1,100 participants. There was one um, Shiva Shakti workshop, like the masculine and the feminine, working those things. And we were doing all
Okay.
sorts of, it was probably 150, 200 people, mixed bag, women and men, clothed.
Yes.
Um, but one of the things we did was men stood in an inner circle facing outwards. Women stood around in an outer circle facing inward. So we were facing each other.
Mm. Interesting. Okay.
And we were to the outer ring was to personify three archetypes. So the little girl, the cosmic slut, and the angry woman.
The little girl, the cosmic slut?
The cosmic slut.
What what does cosmic slut mean?
Well,
Okay.
uh,
And then the old woman.
yeah, the
Okay.
angry woman. So
Oh,
the
the angry
angry,
woman.
yeah, so the angry woman.
Mm.
And it was so interesting because here again, facing this ring of men whom I don't know, little girl. Okay, so we were like given, a couple of minutes to do the each of these archetypes, and then 20 seconds in, she would ding the little bell and we would be scooting one step so that we would face somebody new. So that we had an experience of facing different people as we were doing this.
It must have been quite a cacophony of sounds.
Quite a cacophony of
Yeah.
sounds and
Mm.
um not uncomfortable at all, which surprised me. Little girl is like,
Yeah.
okay, it was like I had this feeling that, oh, I'm far away from my little girl. I don't easily know how does her body move? What do I do when I'm a little girl? How does my, what's the gestures? How am I moving? But I did that. And then Cosmic Slut, and I went all in and had a blast of a time being this sensual, sexual, gorgeous being that I was on fire inside of me.
Mm.
It was so liberating. So I'm going,
Yeah.
why haven't I ever done this before? Because this is fucking fun. Um,
Yeah.
and then the angry one, which again for me was, or rather, that one was kind of the one that I felt most comfortable with, most at home with. It's like
Mm.
I have been angry. I know how that feels. I know how I
Mm.
express this anger. So
Right.
maybe, I got to do these three archetypes in front of three or four men, and then time
Mm.
to swap. We go into the inner circle facing out, and the men go
Okay,
into the
that was
outer
my next
circle.
question is, are they
Yes.
given the turn? Like, what?
So
Okay.
now it's their
Yeah.
turn, and now they are to do the little girl, the cosmic slut, and the angry one.
But men, the little boy.
Yes, 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 because they
Okay.
were
Okay. Yeah.
they were that the outer circle was the feminine, not female. It was the feminine energy. So, um, whereas the inner circle was the masculine energy, the receiver.
Yeah.
So there were mm, there were men
Huh.
and women in the two because it wasn't an even number, and that was fine. So yes, now these men are to do these archetypes of the little girl, the
Yeah.
cosmic slut, and uh,
But
the angry
so
one.
at no point anyone is doing male archetypes.
No, because we had an hour and a half. So
Yeah.
we didn't have time for
Yeah.
that, or rather, we did do that to start with. All of us were inhabiting a male archetype to start with, and then a female archetype to start with, or a feminine and masculine. That was kind of the first, the warm up thing, and then this was the
Yeah.
like the major thing.
Yeah.
And so standing there, and as the inner circle, your job was to receive, to let
Right.
the person in
To
front
kind
of
of
you
be a
just do,
container for those
to
things.
be the container
Yeah.
for this, precisely. So little girls in the form of grown men parading in front of me, it's like not a thing. It doesn't, it didn't feel weird. Then comes the cosmic slut, which was so interesting for me to receive, because
Mm.
there were a few of the men who paraded in front of me, so to speak. Oh, they were gorgeous. They were giving what I had felt that I had been giving when I was in that position. They were just moving in the most fantastic ways. And it was just fantastic to receive. Then comes a
Mm.
man who like really did the slut thing. He was so overtly sexual in his movements, in what he was portraying. And that one was hard for me to receive because I was revolted. It was just, oh,
Because was he being more masculine about it? Like,
no,
because
no,
when you
no, he
describe
wasn't.
cosmic
No,
slut,
he
you kind of
wasn't being
imagine someone like
masculine.
that's not a
No,
masculine.
no, it wasn't that. He was pretending to go down on me and like tongue out and was just, but he was very much not masculine. Um, but it was overtly sexual. And then the angry one, which I
Mm.
found most interesting because I could see how the men were holding back. Because you're not supposed to be angry in front of a woman. So when they had a woman as the container, you could see that they did not dare just let rip, which was interesting again. But the major takeaway for me was that I personally, I'm really where I'm at right now, sensual gets me much, much more than sexual. Overtly sexual doesn't really do anything for me, but sensual, oh man, yes, please, more of that.
Yeah.
And then now I'm thinking about it in the context of what we've been speaking about. It was like, there
Mm.
again, the difference for me of this mental vice is, who is the audience? Who am I doing this for? What is my
Mm.
thoughts, beliefs, constraints about? What am I supposed to do? Who is in front of me? What do I care about? What they care about me? Um, where in that workshop context, that wasn't the
Mm.
thing.
Yeah. Wow. What an intense experience that must
Yeah,
have been.
yeah, very much so.
Um, mm, that's so interesting. Because when you think of men who are sluts, they don't behave in the archetypal way that a woman would. Um, it wouldn't be embodied in the same way that a woman would embody cosmic slutness, whatever that might be. Um, so that's really interesting. Um, yeah, I wouldn't even. I'm sort of stuck on that. I I mean, I don't know if I mentioned this before, but there's a guy that has a really interesting podcast. I think his name is Chris Williamson. Um,
No,
but he recently did a, I'm going to get that wrong, and I'm going to feel bad. Um, he's English, and he did a little bit of a rant or an exploration not too long ago about the difference between beauty and hotness.
Beauty and
And he talks
hotness.
about, yeah, he calls it sort
Mhm,
of hotness, like this
mhm.
cultural obsession with women and men. But let's, for the purposes of this discussion, we'll talk about women being hot. And his sort of uh, idea is to say that beauty and hotness are not the same thing. Hotness is fleeting and shallow
Mm,
and superficial and overtly sexual in a way that gives the people around you the message that that's all you've got. You have your
mm,
youth and that's it. And you're leaning on it like a crutch and you're looking to perform, you're looking to, you know, essentially kind of give your power away. And I think that really does, that's men and women. Whereas beauty, to be seeking beauty for yourself is to expand one's character and knowledge and curiosity and passion to the point where it makes you charismatic. And it's almost irrelevant what you look like. But that to me gets at the distinction between people who are interesting and attractive and appealing. And
mhm,
they always will be when they're 60 or 70 or 80, they still will be because they have beauty and they've worked really hard to cultivate beauty in their life. And that means curiosity, that means openness, generosity, whatever their personal aesthetic is something that they've spent years curating. Um, as opposed to superficial hotness, which disappears with the first wrinkle. And I recently saw this photograph of Kim Kardashian. I didn't look up a whole lot about it. I don't even know. I think it's for the cover of a magazine. I think it was Interview magazine, and it's obscene. I mean, it's. I see that, and I just think, oh
It's
God,
a
it's just.
recent cover?
It's her, yeah, it's her ass, her
Yeah.
bare ass. Like she's dyed in a really bizarre way to look blonde and blonde eyebrows, and it's just really strange. And and it's just her ass in a way that doesn't even look real. And quite frankly, it probably isn't because it's been surgically enhanced. And there's something about the emptiness in the gaze of her eyes. And again, it makes me sound prudish to say, but it's for clicks. It's
Mhm,
hotness. It's not beauty. It's hotness. It's someone who is, a cluster B narcissist looking to enrich themselves and their bank account by, blowing up the internet. And there's a lot of people, I think, who look at beauty as an exercise in blowing up the internet
mhm,
in terms of how they adorn themselves and how they parade themselves in front of the opposite sex, as opposed to people that have the more powerful kind of sensuality. If I were in that circle and a man got down in front of me and tried to kind of simulate performing oral sex, I would be completely disgusted. And I would say that's a male fantasy of female submission that he thinks he's embodying because he's been told to feminize this performance. And to a man, maybe an immature man, the most appealing form of that
mm.
would be a woman down on her knees doing whatever he wants and being just kind of a vessel. Um, but to me, it's much more interesting and deeply more sensual. And, I think, what would I do if I were a man in that scenario and being told to perform that? Cosmic slut. I would perform it like a man. And what I would do is stand up straight and look straight at that woman right in her eyes, seriously, not in an unserious fashion, but in a way that just says, I am the man. And just because that energy is already there, it's already beauty, it's already something that's incredibly deep. And it is around, the natural position that men and women find themselves in. The men are usually bigger, they're a lot stronger. they are the perpetrator of either sexual pleasure or sexual violence. The woman is a vessel in some ways for becoming impregnated or this is something that we have to do. We will only ever know what it is to be penetrated and never to penetrate. That is the mystery between the sexes. Is these things are immutable and cannot be changed. The fashion by which we have sex, we might prop in different ways to try to emulate the other experience, but we
Yeah.
can never fully embody it, right? And so to me, that's much more beautiful and deeply sensual to just have a man look at me directly and just sit in that dynamic of I'm stronger than you and I'm bigger than you. And what I find so compelling right now, just having written a novel with a love story in it and with sex in it, is restraint.
Mhm.
And that is the sensuousness. That is the beauty, is in a man who has size, who has strength, who is that penetrating presence, but who is in control of himself and who does not get down on his knees and is not like the sort of feminist response to what do you want a man to be is down on his knees. No, no, you don't. You don't want him down on his knees. You want him strong and standing tall and staring straight at you. That's what you want. But you're lying. You're stating you don't want that because you want to feminize men to make yourself feel stronger. That's not how it works, honey. And so I find it, what was I saying? I lost my point there. Because I'm thinking as I'm talking, but it's restraint. Yes. So men that are out of control of themselves are out of control of that natural aggression, that testosterone, that strength and that power and that penetrative, sort of naturally more aggressive body. Um, that's incredibly sexy because that is the highest form of enlightened kind of self control to see a man that is measured and responsible and accountable and in restraint of himself and in a way that he's moderated. That is just jet fuel. I mean, to me, that's jet fuel. That a man that is not apologetic, that is not that is going to be in that sort of dominant position and has the moxie and the self assuredness to be in that position in a way that doesn't make me feel like I'm giving up myself, you know? I'm just sort of risking in a way that I'm not entirely sure that I'm making sound here. But I find that so interesting that well, that the women were receiving that energy. Or wait, no, the men were receiving that energy first and then we flipped and the men were giving that energy. And I'm like, but I don't want men to give that energy like they're a woman. And also, I don't think I would get down on my knees either for to demonstrate cosmic slut. That's a
I
weird
didn't. I sure
interpretation
didn't.
of that. Yeah, it's
Yeah. Yeah.
interesting. I just want to
Yeah.
let you know that these are just
You're
so I might
dying.
try turning. Should I maybe if we can pause this and I'll switch these out because they're gonna
You do.
die. Hold on just a second. Now I'm gonna take my fashioned these ones and put them in power on. Okay. Now let's see if this. Are you hearing me?
Yeah,
Okay.
but I'm not hearing you through them, I think.
Hold on just a second. That
Control.
should be better now. Is that better?
Yeah.
You can hear me now?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, good. And I can hear you.
Good.
Okay,
We're
there. Now we're
back.
back to it. Now I've got the little lame blue light flashing.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
And it was that was part of the interesting thing about this was
Mm.
again, the alibi. So when we started this session, we were first, everybody was told to just walk around, embody masculinity, masculine energy. It's like the more masculine you can, the most, just embody it. So everybody was walking around, kind of looking at each other, trying to embody this thing. And
Yeah.
then everybody was to embody the feminine. So now step into the feminine energy. Be the most feminine you
Mhm.
can be. Um, and to
Here's a pickle
see,
jar. Have a hard time opening it. Here's a car. Try and parallel park. Like,
and
what does that even
it's
mean?
it was more physical. How do you
Yeah.
walk around in a space of 150, 200 other people and try to be embodied masculinity or embodied femininity? What are you doing? And there were all everything on the spectrum from the worst caricature
Right. I
of
can't see
it.
how it couldn't be a caricature.
Well, that was,
Yeah.
yeah, but well, there were a lot of men there who just kind of walked around, you know.
That's what I would do. I wouldn't.
Yeah. But so
Yeah.
it was interesting to see in me what happens when I try to find the inner masculine in me, what happens when I try to find the inner feminine in me, and what is it that I see in others? What do I perceive? And one of the coolest things for me was I came up against a probably under the age of 18 young man, so a 16-year-old boy or boy man, when we were doing the feminine thing.
Mm.
And it was so cool to see what he was doing, how he's doing, and how he was looking at me and daring to look at me and still try to embody this thing that he felt was feminine. It was really, really something special because that there was no caricature there. It was very genuine or authentic or something, but it was two people meeting. Let's see each other here.
Yeah.
Um, and there's something again with that alibi thing here, a container, a workshop, an exercise. You're giving a set of rules, or this is, instructions. Do it, take it, try
Yeah.
it on. What happens if? Um, so that was probably one of the first times in my life where being directed that way, having this title, at least this archetype, embody this archetype. There were instructions, but I still felt free in trying to find this
Yeah.
in me. What does
Yeah.
a small girl look like for me, in me? What does that feel like? How does that feel in my body? What is the cosmic slut in me? How does that feel? What's the difference? Can I play with it? It's like it was really
Mm.
a, a, a moment where that I don't do theater restraint or
Right.
constraint.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, I could put that aside.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm actually or
Well, because
turning it
everyone around you
off.
is performing. Yeah.
But
Everyone's doing the
everybody
same
around me
thing.
could be performing anyway, and I could still be there. But
Yeah.
at that time, that context, that setting, somehow I managed to turn that one off and just,
Mm.
okay, I'll just go with it. I'll just see what comes. I'll just play with it. And it was
Yeah.
very, very liberating. And like you say, there was a lot of generosity in me at that time, in me
Yeah.
towards me, that then is, of course, also, of course, maybe not, but also sent out to those around me. But
Yeah.
it was a generosity towards me. Like, okay, here's something that I don't have a clue what I'm going to do, but I'll just do it. So that decision, okay, cosmic slut. What the fuck is that? What do I do? Um, and I just had fun.
Mhm.
So there was
Yeah.
some type of that alibi ingredient in that setting at that
Yeah.
time that just released me from this mental vice that just said, okay, we'll just pause this for now.
Yeah.
Um,
It sounds like a fascinating experience. I can't help but wonder what I would have done. I don't know. I don't know what I would have done if a man had have gotten down in front of me and simulated sex acts. Uh, it's an
I
awkward
was
because
disgusted.
yeah,
I was
yeah, I
disgusted,
know.
but I also tried to be the vessel still
That's right,
and
because you're
not,
sort of
right? Because that's what
supporting.
my role at the moment, but inside, and I was thinking, oh, this. I don't know if he thinks that I'm gonna get turned on by this, but I am not. I am revolted. This is just
Yeah.
not not in a way that I was thinking that he's revolting. This sucks. That's bad. Nobody should ever do that. But rather, oh, it's so interesting. I'm revolted. I don't want this. This does not turn me on or anything. It's the opposite. I just is like, no, not for me. Not right here or not right now, at least. Because I
Mhm.
don't know, maybe in 10 years, if I do the same thing and it would happen, maybe something else would happen in me. I don't know that. But at the moment, it was just, oh no, this is not for me, but I have a role. I'm here to just receive. And the role
Mm.
was to feel what happened inside. Right, that was part of the instruction to sense into me rather than be,
Yeah.
what's going on in you, but rather what's going on in me when I'm faced with these
That is
different
that
archetypes.
is so interesting because as women, as receivers, sexually speaking, I mean, we're also givers, but just our anatomy makes us receivers. That is often our mindset when we get into sexual trouble
Mm,
is I am I am a vessel and
mhm.
his this is obviously something he needs to do. This is something he needs to witness or see for himself, or he needs access to this part of me um, that I feel obliged to allow him to do or to give. And it, it's not necessarily something that I believe, but I'm just noticing those instructions and what's the word I'm looking for? The implications of those instructions when you push the arrow all the way through. Um, from a feminist point of view, it's a bit of a riddle. uh, yeah,
Which I think then has to be prefaced with the fact that what we were supposed to be embodying was the masculine. So
yeah,
it was the masculine receiver, the masculine vessel that we were to be. So, did everybody manage that? Probably not. Um,
mm,
so again, it's like in all these, I mean, I did
mm,
lots of weird workshops during that
yeah,
week, but it was also like I could have left, if I would feeling that, and I did
mm,
walk out on some workshops because like, no, this is not for me. This is not where I want to be right now. This is not where I what I need right now, etc. So that was very much the message, I would say, the entire
yeah,
festival,
yeah,
right? So it's like take responsibility for you and make sure that you aren't violating yourself or allowing somebody else to violate yourself. So we were also to
Mhm.
set up sharing circles. So we had a sharing circle where we met up after lunch every day. And I was
Yeah.
very, very clear. I only want to be with women. I don't want to be in a mixed group. That was
Yep.
so super clear in me. So I found a
Mm.
group of just women. If I
Yep.
had then said, okay, well, I shouldn't do that, or here's this group of mixed, I'll just go with that,
Yeah.
then I would have been
Yeah.
in violation of my own needs at the moment. So it was, yeah, fascinating thing. And I'm really,
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
happy I went, and I don't ever want to go back because I don't want to be again in a setting where there's 1,100 people whose energy is just, whoa, I don't want that anymore. But I don't want to go to big conferences either. It's like, so it
Mhm.
doesn't, I don't want to go to a big coaching conference with 1,000 coaches. No, thank you. I don't want that.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I've, I, I'm done with that. I've done that, been there, done that. It's like, thank you very much. I don't need that anymore.
Mhm.
I want the more intimate, smaller circles.
Yeah.
Um, but it was extremely rewarding. I learned
Yeah.
so much and I experienced so much, and I did things again somewhere, and I'm happy about this. I'm happy I can see this. There were several workshops where this mental vice were like, okay, put down. Um, and I could be, but not at all in a way that I regretted afterwards. Not at all in a, oh shit, did I do that? I shouldn't have. I didn't want to really. It's like
Sure.
not at all any
Mhm.
of that energy, but
Yeah.
rather just, oh, I'm so happy I got the experience or the opportunity to remove it and to just be in flow, which is
Yeah.
probably not a given. There can be group pressure in settings like that, but
Yeah.
I felt very comfortable with my ability to set boundaries. Um,
Yeah. And there was no. I didn't mean that as any kind of critique of your
no,
reaction
no,
or
no,
any.
no.
I don't know how I would react, but more just noting the irony of the instructions,
Yeah,
given the context of overtly, like, a man acting like a cosmic slut for you acting like a man. And then to hold that space and be that container and be that receiver
yeah,
and allow that person to do whatever they need to do for their own healing or for their own self-expression. And there is something in there that is sort of inherently boundary smashing
yeah,
in a way that replicates the boundary smashing of traditional
yeah,
sort of aggressive relations between the sexes. That it's just kind of ironic. It's interesting, but then there's a lot of irony and a lot of mixed messages in what we see from the culture for
yeah.
sure, for men and for women. Um, yeah, what an interesting experience. Mm.
And coming home from that experience, I had because it's about 600 kilometers north of here. So I took the train back home on the
Yeah.
Sunday or Saturday or whatever it was. I was there basically a week. And coming home or leaving the place, going to town, waiting for the train, getting on the train for about 48 hours or something.
Mhm.
I was in an altered state. I experienced it was like I was a part of everything, or everything was a part of me in a way that I'd never experienced before, that I can imagine is what it feels like to be in the altered state of LSD or
Mhm.
psychotropic
Hyper
substances,
tuned
etc.
in.
Hyper tuned in. It was
Yeah.
fantastic, and I was So I came home and I was lying in bed trying to go to sleep in the evening. And I was just, I was aware of all of the leaves on the trees outside.
Mm,
It's like I was just everywhere. And then gradually during those 2 days, it's like all of my tentacles were kind of being rolled up, wrapped up again inside of me. It's like, okay, now and I woke up on the if it was after the second night home or something, just feeling like, okay, now I'm kind of back to the normal state of me, the one that I'm used to. Um,
mm,
so for someone who's never done a trip of any kind, that was the most trippy I've ever experienced.
yeah.
Um, and absolutely fascinating.
Mm,
Um,
yeah. And how long ago was that?
2018.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah,
Gosh.
yeah.
Amazing. How interesting. So, how would you feel? I mean, knowing that we're wrapping up 5 conversations today, what's your takeaway from the time that we've spent ranting and recounting, ranting and storytelling and
Yeah.
exposing more than I meant to. I know I certainly did, but I don't regret that. And being vague about some things. And um, I'm just sitting here thinking, like, how do we sum all of this up? Or is there anything that we spoke about that kind of stayed with you that you had one of those sticky conversation responses to where you thought like that was interesting to you or that stayed with you or that we would want to kind of like how do we wrap this up? How do we sort of sum up the general feeling of the places that we've traveled together?
So every season I realize that for every conversation partner that I have, each of those pairings gets a flavor. Towards the end of it, I can look back and I can see,
You can see the threads.
I can
Yeah.
see the threads. This is what was the thing with you and me. And with you and me, I have a lot of sense of history. So we have been in the far off ancestors
Yeah.
many times, also today. So that there's this an always and already feel to it that we have been in what has always been and what is already there. Um, because we've spoken about ancestors, we've spoken about place,
Mhm.
um, we've spoken about grief and about death and life. So for me, that's the flavor of you and me. We have gone deep, like in multi dimensions, not just deep here, but deep in like 100,000
Yeah.
years ago, or 1,000 years ago, or 100 years ago, and all of that.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um,
Well, I want to say too, I really appreciate the way that you talk makes it possible for me to think while I talk and to not feel like I'm always in peril while I'm thinking and talking at the same time. That there's sort of your openness basically just says, okay, things are firing in my mind, things are connecting. I'm not sure how yet, but let me try to put a pin in it. And you're like, okay, take a crack at it. And I can try to articulate how I'm feeling, knowing that you're listening in good faith in the sense that you have no preconceived notions of who I am or what I'm trying to say, or which is really lovely to be able to do that, because I think, you know, it is hard sometimes to think when we speak and speak at the same time, when we're afraid of saying the wrong thing, when we're afraid of, especially as a writer, when I express myself, I'm supposed to be immaculate. I'm supposed to be thorough in my thinking. I'm supposed to be supremely self aware. I'm supposed to have already done my thinking already so that when I do speak, I'm being clear and there's no chance that I can be twisted or misconstrued or misunderstood or misheard. Of course, that's a myth, because if someone wants to mishear you, they are going to mishear you,
Yeah.
no matter what you say, no matter what your intentions are, no matter who you are. Um, but it is really lovely to be able to have conversations when I forget that we're recording. And that's really lovely, where I can try to articulate thoughts that are not only not yet mapped, but they're also unedited.
Yeah.
So, I haven't been thinking. I sit down every day and I think, I wonder what me and Elena are going to talk about today. I have no idea. And it's weird that I'm okay with that. That that I wouldn't at least do a little bit of sort of pre-thinking. Okay, well, I might touch on this. And if we touch on this, I can't go anywhere near this because it's too hot. But if we stay over here, that should be okay. And I've been thinking about this, but I just don't know how to talk about it yet. So I'm gonna steer clear of that too. And there's no anticipation at all. And we'll just start out talking about cats, and then we're talking about global geopolitics
Yeah.
300 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's really refreshing and wonderful. I've lived it. Yeah. So thank you for that, for being able to you make me feel like I'm in good hands to kind of venture into territory that we don't know yet.
Mm. Which
Yeah.
is, you know, it brings tears to my eyes to hear you say that, because
Mm.
that is so what I want this to be, because
Yeah.
that is so what I need and what I crave and what I long for. I
Mm.
long for these. And this ties back to what we've been talking about today. I long for this place where I'm not afraid
Yeah.
to be shunned, to be deemed, no, 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 thank you, no, but no,
Amen.
thank you.
Amen.
Rather, but I
You're
can
not
come
supposed to
here.
say that. You're not supposed to think that. Yeah.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
rather, I can come here as well and just be. And
Yeah.
we make this, you know. So um, it is fantastic for me to do this. Um, and I have 5 of these pairs. Um,
Yeah. That's a lot.
it is a lot. Um, and it is enriching, it is nourishing. It it gives me hope and energy,
Mm.
and kind of somehow it builds my resilience. It
Yeah.
it makes me more able to do even more of this. So it is really a regenerative
Mm.
practice of resilience. Um,
That's a good word for it. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Beautiful. It's
yeah,
getting weird to not have another one ahead.
yeah.
Like,
But we do have
yeah.
one more ahead with more of
Right.
the
With the
others,
group, right?
with the group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm
So
excited for that. That's gonna be really great.
yeah,
Yeah.
um, I look forward to that one too, because it's
Yeah.
the 2 times, or actually the 4 times that we've done that, because we've never managed to get everybody on the same date.
Right. Yeah.
Everybody is here. So it's fantastic to see what we have is there, even when there's 5 of us. Um,
Right. Yeah.
and everybody so far, knock on wood, has expressed just that it's just
Yeah.
something special to be in this type of setting where this is how we do it. This is what this is.
Yeah.
Um, it is a show up and respond to what shows up type of setting.
Yeah. Well, it's too bad we don't have more of that in our lives. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
it's one thing to be able to stage a space like this or join after being invited into a space like this. But how do we create a space like this? And with these expectations attached in real life, and not that this isn't real life, but in our interactions with the people that we see every day, why is it so much harder um, to ask that someone hears you fairly um, without sitting down across from you and thinking this person is guilty of wrong thing, or this person is in some other tribe, not my tribe, or this person wasn't in my tribe, but now I'm not so sure. And I'm going to test them now. I'm going to gather evidence for why she's not in our tribe anymore, which thus makes her this, that, or the other thing. And it's so it's boring.
And I
I
think
yeah.
we can do more of that. And doing
Oh, I
this,
think so
I've
too.
done this now. This will
Mm,
be episode 74, I think, that goes out. So 74 conversations like this. Has it had an impact on my life outside of this context? Yes. Hell
mm,
yes. Because it can't not. Because for me, it's so many hours.
yeah,
Um, it's at least 150 hours of conversation, probably upwards of 200. And then I'm also doing the reading through the transcript and working the
of
episode
course. Yeah.
description, etc. Right. So an extra 100 hours at least on top of that. So I've been swimming in this. I've been bathing in this type of energy. So it definitely has
Yeah.
affected my other places and spaces, um, where some are more receptive to it.
Hmm.
It's easier to just come with this to some groupings. Some are more, no, no, that's not how we do it over here. And then I have a choice. Show up
Hmm.
and respond to what shows up is valid there too. How do I and how can I bring some of this also into those
Mm,
settings where this is farther from the way that this is how we do it? Um,
mm. Yeah. How do we maintain our integrity
yeah,
and not wind up a hermit living in a boxcar?
yeah, yeah.
The question.
Good question.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
I'm a little bit reluctant because it feels like, oh no, I don't want this to end because I don't.
mm,
And I also know I've thought that every season, and I would not have you not done because I stuck with season one conversations, which I easily could have done because the conversations were just so fantastic.
yeah. Yeah.
So there is this life, death, life cycle to it as well. And I
Yeah.
know that this is not the last time you and me will have a
Oh,
Zoom.
no.
No.
No,
So
no, no.
that
Yeah.
also is one of those boons.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I hope that I was able to uh, be generous with you, and I hope that I was able to bring some energy that is something that you were looking for to
Oh,
this whole
yeah.
endeavor.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. For sure.
Wonderful.
Yeah, it's been
Great.
fantastic.
Yeah, it has. It
So
has been a
I'm
lot of
so
fun.
happy that I asked you, and I'm so happy that you
Me
said yes.
too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Me
Yeah.
too.
And it's been
Yes.
especially fun to see how you have been You have been extremely generous because you have been writing about each of those episodes, your words,
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
experience, your takeaways from it, which has been
Mm.
fantastic for me. Not everybody has done that. And I don't have the
Oh,
expectation that you should. So it was
right.
another one of those boons. Just, oh, wow. Um, because again, I perceive it the way I perceive it. Um, and I get to write about it. I do the little episode description and I find the little snippets and I put some of those out into the world. And I know what I mean with those, what they mean
Yeah.
to me. But then I get that from you. And it's like, wow.
Oh,
Um,
right. Yes. Yes. When I do my little reflections on
but
things.
you
Yeah.
do your, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that has been just fantastic for me.
Oh,
Um,
good.
Because and that links back to what we've been speaking to again today, because that is a mirroring.
Yeah.
Again, that
Hmm.
is for me, that is a mirror that, okay, I wasn't the only one who found value in this. I don't believe that, but it's
Yeah.
good to have some concrete evidence that, oh,
Of
look,
course.
Kate writes all of this beautiful things about a conversation that we've had. Um,
Yeah.
And a
Well, I
little bit of
treasure it. And
validation.
that's
Yeah, a
why.
little bit of
Yeah.
validation or acknowledgement is like, yeah, we need that because we're not solo creatures. We're not supposed to live like a hermit in a boxcar.
I
That's
know.
not
I'm
what
tempted. I'm
humanity
tempted.
is.
I'm really
That's one
tempted.
thing. We're not supposed to,
Check
though.
in on me in 4 months and see
I will. I
where
promise
I'm
I will.
at.
I promise
Yeah.
I
Well,
will.
it's going to be a really nice box tower. It's going to be really comfy and
Good. Good.
yeah. Um, but yes, no, I've appreciated it so much. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
come and join me in
see,
my boxcar.
I will. If I ever come to your part of the world again, I sure will.
Oh yeah, come and stay at our sea captain's house.
Yeah.
We have lots
Yeah.
of space, and
Yeah.
only more as time goes on. My oldest kid is in grade 12, so
Yeah.
I'm trying to treasure everything that I've got
Yeah.
left of these lovely young men. So
Yeah. You
the
do.
babies,
The
shocking.
babies, they grow up.
Yeah,
My
yeah,
youngest turns 18 in a month. And it's like, oh my God. How?
yeah.
How?
Right. Yeah. 18. My oldest will be 18 in January. So.
Yeah. It's
Oh boy,
fascinating.
literally not a child anymore.
Precisely.
I
Precisely.
don't know that I'm ready, but I also
Well,
love it. Yeah.
yeah. We are. We are
Yeah.
ready, I think, because we
Yeah.
can't not be.
Even if we're not ready, we will be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Precisely. Well, see you in the group session
Yes. I'm excited
and
about that.
yeah, and in other places too. So make a
Yes.
great day. Yeah, and
Wonderful.
have so much fun on the hike. I look
I
forward to
will.
the images
Yeah.
and the stories.
Yeah. I'm excited about it. We're not sure how much of it is going to involve bushwhacking and some of it probably will. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the conversation, and I'll
Yeah.
let you know how the mushrooms go over.
Oh, cool.
We'll see.
Excellent.
I'll give you all kinds of nightmares with my talk of my hallucinogenic adventures in the middle of the woods. Hopefully,
Or
not
maybe you
involving
will actually give
humans.
me a little kick in the behind. Who knows? Who
It's just the
knows?
whole microdosing thing. It's
Yeah.
better now than 10 years ago because at least now I
Yeah.
can order something on the internet
Yeah.
instead of doing some shady thing and end
Yeah.
up, dying
Yeah.
in a bathtub
Yeah, and
like
I
Whitney Houston
have
or some
other
that thing.
friends who are also into it, who are also raving about it. So
I know,
there's
I
a
know.
lot of there's a lot of inspiration to be had at the moment.
So mm, our friends are raving about microdosing mushrooms, and so we think we should perhaps take a cue and be brave and be open. And you are a friend who raves about getting off your kids and being naked. So maybe I'll even do those two things at the
Yeah,
same time because we are
yeah.
staying at a lake and I may just have to be brave and be open and not be, you know, not be so scared of being in the air. So we'll see.
Now I really look forward to
There
hearing
won't be
all
any
about
pictures
this.
of that, but yeah,
No,
I'm
but you'll
excited. It's
tell
gonna be
me.
lovely. Yeah,
Yeah,
I will.
yeah,
I will.
yeah. Well,
Yeah. Wonderful.
have fun.
Bye,
Bye.
Helena.
In this episode, I both mentioned my book, Doing Gentle with an Edge, which you can find on tankesbjörn.com as an ebook and an audiobook, and you can also find it on Amazon as an ebook. In it, one of the chapters is about music as an alibi, which you have just heard us riff quite a lot about. I'm curious about what your alibi is or might be. So if you are curious about that, check it out and do let me know. But we also spoke about, or I also mentioned at least, the Tankesbjörn monthly Zoom meetups that we have once a month on a random date for 90 minutes on a topic. Sometimes I don't set a topic, and sometimes I set a topic. And regardless, it always turns into these fantastic explorative conversations, discoveries, adventures. So if you're curious about that, please do check it out. You can find it via the community page on tankesbjörn.com, or you can go to patreon.com/tankesbjörn. I would love it if you wanted to join us. So, bye.